Steve Perreault, United States Army, Vietnam. I interviewed Steve in Fargo, North Dakota, September 18, 2010. It was my first trip to Fargo. Some of you have seen John Meyer's interview. I interviewed him and others at that time. Been to Fargo 5 or 6 times with my work. Just a great place to go. Got a lot of family and friends up there. But Steve had a very unique and a very specialized job in Vietnam. He was assigned to the Army Security Agency, which is a part of the NSA. He was an intelligence gatherer. He went to the Vietnamese language school based in Phu Bai. His actual MOS was a 04B, which is a voice intercept operator. He was a code breaker. You've heard of the code talkers. Steve was a code breaker. He interrogated the enemy and just did an amazing job. Just a very unique perspective of what happened in Vietnam. He was there 2 years, received 2 Bronze Stars, folks, for his service, and was part of the 509th Radio Research Group. Steve, I salute you. God bless you, brother. I love you. Thank you for your heart for our country and for our veterans especially, and making it possible for me to come up there and interview Gayla's preacher too. A year and a half ago. So Steve, God bless you, brother. Hey, I'd like to thank Brandon Glidden. Brandon found out about Steve and he said, I'd like to sponsor that interview. So Brandon, thank you for making it possible for others to hear and to learn about Steve's perspective of Vietnam. God bless you and thank you for your service to our country, Brandon. Okay, folks, I'd like to encourage you, if you'd like to sponsor one of these stories. People say, why do you need a sponsor? Because it takes a lot of resources that I don't have to bring these stories forth, folks. I have a lot of videos in my archives. The interviews are done years ago, most of them, and now I need your help to bring them forth. And a lot of you are taking ownership in this work. You're connecting with these veterans, and you're making it possible for others to hear these stories. You know, history's best learned from those who are there, and these are the stories from the source, folks. So if you'd like to sponsor a story, I would encourage you to do so. Think about it, pray about it, those of you who pray, and see what happens, okay? There's information in the video description of this video, below the video, and on my website, larrycapetto.com, sponsor a vet. You can also donate to my work through the comment section of the video. So, glad to bring you this story. Subscribe to this channel. Let's keep this thing going, folks. Freedom is not free, freedom is earned. Like I've said, we're fighting for the same freedoms in our own country today that our veterans fought for, and we're fighting for our veterans today, folks. In reality, that's what we're doing. We're protecting the freedoms that we still have. And just share these videos with others, and let's keep this thing going. Like I said, our young people need to hear these stories. It should be mandatory showing, as a lot of you have said in your comments, in schools across this country. So, all right, I'm happy to bring Steve's story. God bless you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, and you were drafted?
No, I enlisted. I couldn't let them have a war without me.
What year was that?
1967.
What did you know about Vietnam at the time, and how did you feel about going in the military?
At the time, I knew what I'd seen on the news, and it bothered me because what I was seeing on the news felt wrong, felt like it wasn't the truth, and I was young and patriotic, and at the time I was, what was I? I was 19 or 20 years old, and I enlisted, and at the time I enlisted, they did a pre-enlistment test, and one of the things they did was found out that I had an aptitude for language, because I'd grown up speaking both French and English, and they talked me into joining an organization called the Army Security Agency, which is a division of NSA, which is primarily intelligence gathering. And from basic training, I went directly into Vietnamese language school. Spent a year and a half in Monterey, California, enjoying the weather, and knowing it was a good thing, because while I did learn the language, I also knew for a year and a half in advance that I was going to Vietnam. There was no sudden shock when the orders showed up at my hands. And you were psychologically prepared for it, literally ready to go.
Where was basic training?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
So this was just basic training. It wasn't specialized training, just your
No, just
typical boot camp.
typical boot camp, yeah.
And before you went in the military, though, were there people that you had known maybe in school that went to Vietnam? Maybe some of them didn't come back home, or do you remember anything like that? Or?
At the time I enlisted, I had a friend, a very good friend of mine I graduated from high school with, who was in Vietnam at the time I enlisted. And he and I had started to college, and he wasn't doing well in college, just couldn't settle into it. So he joined the Army, wound up going to Vietnam. He was in communications. And I had a couple of other friends from high school who'd, one of them tried college and just flunked out, and he went to Vietnam. He later died there.
So you go to basic training, and then you go to a year and a half of
Language school.
And then tell me about what you remember about, I'm assuming you stepped off a plane in Vietnam for the first time. Tell me what you remember about that experience.
The first step off the plane into Vietnam, the first thing that hit you was the smell. Because you could smell it. What you were smelling was it's called NMHOM. It's a fish sauce that they put on top of just about everything, but it smells. And the way they make it, is literally they've got a barrel that's probably 10 feet high and 10 feet in diameter. They fill it with fish and salt and layers of fish and salt all the way up to the top, put a sliding cover on top, weight it with rocks, and let it sit. And it literally rots. And then they drain the juice off the bottom, filter it to get what do you want to call get the chunks out of it, and it's very salty. It's high protein, but it's called NMHOM, and it smells.
That's powerful what you said. What about the heat? Was it hot at the time? Did you feel
It was
blast of heat, or?
Yeah, it was, and that was a kind of a shock too, because I left northern Minnesota where I was on leave. It was January, and went to Vietnam where it was 95 degrees and probably 90% humidity when we hit the ground.
Where did you land? Where were you at?
Landed in Saigon. From Saigon, I was assigned to a base at a place called Phu Bai, which is central Vietnam, just south of Hue. And it was an old French base. It was it had been a French compound prior to the 1954, and it was we were stationed there. We were a radio intercept base where we monitored enemy communications. That we recorded them, we transcribed them. If they were encoded, we attempted to, and a lot of times broke the codes they were using. We also had planes that flew up and did circles over North Vietnam and would record anything they could pick up, and we'd transcribe that too.
What was your MOS? Do you have an official MOS?
Originally, I was an 04B, which is a voice intercept operator. After I got there, they discovered I had a propensity for codes. I could catch numbers very fast. I went from code breaking, voice intercept operating. I was later recruited for an organization called TAREX, which is Target Exploitation. And what they do is interrogate prisoners, look at captured documents, and did that kind of, did a lot of interrogations, translated a lot of captured documents. Primarily, we were looking for documents that had to do with communications. So if we found something that explained how they made up a code, or at one point we captured all their code books, and for 6 months we were breaking everything they were transcribing.
You talk about the NVA, the VC. Well, what kind of? That's who you're fighting, right?
Yes.
So is it the North Vietnamese Army that's doing the talking that you're breaking these codes with? Or?
Primarily the North Vietnamese Army. The Viet Cong, as they were, for the most part, were a joke. They were not effective. If it had just been them we would have been fighting, there would have been no war.
Sure. Yeah. So you're in North Vietnam, South Vietnam. Where are you at as far as?
I was in South Vietnam. I was right on the northern border of South Vietnam, right outside, like I said, outside
Are
the
you
city.
working with the Arvins too? I mean,
Working with the Arvins, we had some of them who worked with us to help transcribe tapes because they could they had a better ear for the Vietnamese than most Americans did. I worked with them, and I wound up pretty much being the liaison with them because I got along with them better. Remember.
so now tell you what group or I mean what division or company or brigade are you with, or give me the whole thing.
Okay, I was with the 509th Radio Research Group, which had units scattered all over the country. And what we did was there were one-man listening posts in some places that literally sat and listened to communications. And that was the object of it was to gather intelligence on the enemy, find out what they were doing, a lot of times just to figure out where they were.
Tell me how close you were to any combat or just interaction with troops and or helicopters or any of that stuff about Vietnam that you hear about.
Well, I mentioned the one-man listening posts. For a while, I was at a place, it didn't exist. Officially, it was the map coordinates where Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam, and South Vietnam met. That was the official coordinates that were listed. It was someplace deep inside Laos, right along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It was literally a mountaintop that had been bombed, and there was a crater. And you would listen to the communications. It was very good listening spot. And because the trail ran right below, and in the valley down below, we knew there were troops moving through. And we would literally, the defense there was you pulled pins on hand grenades and rolled them down the hill if somebody tried to come up, and they promised you an airstrike within 5 minutes if you had problems. At one point there, we were listening, and there was a designator for Nguyen Van Giap, who was the commanding general of the Vietnamese army. Comparable to Schwarzkopf. Okay, we thought, or at least I thought, and they agreed with me when they heard my information, that he was in the valley below me. And I called it in, and I was saying, we got to hit this. We got to bomb this. They called back and said, hang on. And my thought was, hang on meant wait. They meant hang on. They called in a B-52 strike with 500-pound bombs. This is less than half a mile from me. And you're not supposed to do that. This was not an age of precision bombing. At the end of it, I was deaf. The ground was shaking. The noise was horrendous. They said I was screaming into the radio that I was still alive and to come get me. They sent out a helicopter, and literally how you got off this place was you took a run and jumped into the helicopter that was hovering next to you. And unfortunately, we didn't get him. But at the time, I learned that I was expendable. But
So were you there one whole year?
I was there a little over 2 years.
So was that 2 tours or 1 tour?
2 tours. I extended, at the time, they were, Vietnamese linguists were of absolutely no use back in the States. They were being sent back to the U.S. and trained for riot duty. And I wasn't going to do that.
Steve, you hear a lot about Vietnam, and I'm proud of my film. I think it brings out a more positive image of Vietnam, the Vietnam veteran. But, you know, there's like a stereotype, though, about Vietnam among our society, and they think negatively. They think of drugs. They think of baby killers. They think of it was an unpopular war and all that. What was the culture like when you were there with the troops and just the, you know, some of the things I just shared? What did you actually experience there? Was it any of that? Was it something?
Here, give me a moment. This, first of all, yeah, there were drugs there, but they were just as prevalent, probably more prevalent here in the States. The baby killing thing just riles me. Every time you talk about Vietnam, if you mention the word massacre, everybody thinks of My Lai, because everybody knows about My Lai. Okay. My Lai was an attack on an enemy stronghold. There were 120-some people killed. Of them, at least half were legitimate targets, were enemies. The others may have been sympathizers, but they were non-combatants. They shouldn't have been shot. American troops did get out of hand, did start shooting them. But other American troops stopped them, put an end to it. And it was not proof that the American troops were out of hand. It was proof that American troops could control themselves and would control their own troops if things got wrong. But that's the only thing you hear about. For years, every week, there was a story on the national news about it. There's still at least one a year right now, and it's 40 years later. In 1968, during the Tet Offensive, the North Vietnamese overran the city of Hue. When the South Vietnamese army and the U.S. troops drove them out, they found a lot of dead bodies, a lot of damage, but there were over 2,000 people missing. Just couldn't be found. They were low-level government employees. Meter readers for the utility companies, city clerks, post office workers, medical workers, librarians who had just disappeared. A year later, 1969, shortly after I got there, on the beaches outside Hue, large patches of bright green grass started showing up. There's only one thing that makes a patch of grass like that. It's dead bodies. The stench was horrendous. There was this old woman, and I was trying to console her. She kept going on and on and on about some shirt, about a shirt she had made. She's going on and on about it, and I couldn't understand what she was talking about, till I realized that the body that was being pulled out of the grave at the time had that shirt on it. And there were people there filming this. The films have never been seen to this day that I know of. You talk about atrocities that Americans committed. Nobody ever mentions what happened. It's just wrong. The Americans, yes, Americans did things wrong, but not the way the Viet Cong did, not the way the North Vietnamese did. I remember from that point on, I was angry. And I was literally keeping my own body count. And some friends of mine convinced me that it wasn't healthy. And it is something that I've tried to bury for years. But every so often it comes back.
Have you ever told your story kind of like you're doing today before?
No.
What do you think prompted you to call me?
I was helping some friends. They were running an auto dealership, and they'd repossessed a truck. The truck had a freezer in the back of it. It had been sitting outside. I helped them get it. We pulled it inside the garage. The next morning, it was smelling. We figured something was in the freezer. We opened it, and apparently it was pork or something, but the smell of the rotted meat just brought it all back.
But I mean, you saw the story in the paper about my work, and then you just felt like you wanted to talk or whatever.
I felt that somebody had to tell the story.
You're doing good. Tell me about some of the, well, I mean, that's obviously probably one of the worst things you saw or experienced, but I mean, was like with the Iraq War, everybody thinks it's all bad because of the media, but was there any rebuilding or good things going on in Vietnam at this time?
At the time, there were there were a lot of good things going on. The problem in describing the Vietnam War is nobody thought we could lose. And we didn't lose, we quit. But the South Vietnamese themselves, they were, you know, the ones in the cities and some of they were becoming rich because, you know, they were selling things to the Americans. They were working with the Americans. You know, for some of them, life was really good, and it was kind of a disconnect. If the war hadn't ended, you know, eventually the war would have eventually the North Vietnamese would have been defeated because they just didn't have the resources to win the war. It's just, but the way the media portrayed it and the American people were getting tired of the war.
Did life become very mundane or routine there, or was it always a new day? And
a lot of it was boring. A lot of it was just, I know we did do a lot of partying and drinking. I know one night, a friend of mine and I went out, and we were out drinking. We were having fun, and I know we had too much because we flagged down a cab, and one of us, we're not sure to this day which one of us it was, decided that we had to take a bathroom break before we rode back to our hotel in the cab. Went into it was a long, narrow bar, went to the back of the bar, went to the bathroom, got back in the cab, and we're driving down the street with the cab driver. Now, this other guy and I both speak Vietnamese. The cab driver is mumbling under his breath about these silly Americans who can't hold their beer, can't hold their water. He's going on, and we're giving him grief in Vietnamese, and it's general nonsense going on as we're going down the street. We got about a block from our hotel, and the hotel blew up. And we all looked at each other, and it was just, if we hadn't gone to the bathroom, we'd have been haggling with the driver about the fare or something. And the explosion was not as bad as it looked. It was a fuel tank in front of with an electric generator in front of the building that exploded. There was a charge underneath it, but it just a big mushroom cloud went up the side of the building. Looked real bad, but wasn't all that bad. Nobody got hurt. Like I said, we'd have been dead if we'd have been standing out front with the cab. But it was, yeah, there were things like that happened. I used to think that I kind of thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof because I walked through things that nobody should have. You know, it was.
So you felt invincible.
Yes.
Tell me about the Bronze Star, the citation for that.
Okay, well, there's two of them, but one of them was for primarily because of the information I brought back from Hue, and the other one was because we'd during the Perreault attacks during Nixon's administration, we captured a communications center. We captured all of their code documents, and we captured all the new ones before they could distribute them, so they didn't have new code books to use. So they started reusing the old ones. But we also captured copies of all the old ones. And because we had those for about 6 months, we were reading every code, every message that we could copy.
So what's the end result of breaking a code or listening in, giving this to commanders out in the field, or how does that all translate into saving lives or winning battles, or how does that work?
Okay. What it did, when we broke a code, usually what happened, we were getting information on where there was going to be a mortar attack, or where there was going to be an ambush, or where troops are moving. If you knew where there was going to be an ambush, you could alert troops in the area. If you knew where troops are moving, literally we called in airstrikes. And part of what we did was we became, how do I say, we were supposed to be briefers, but we were salesmen. We were trying to convince the higher staff that they should attack here or bomb here. Because I gave one briefing. We were, the commander of my unit was a captain. He's giving a briefing, and General Abrams was there, and he'd asked General Abrams would ask a question, he'd turn to me, and I'd answer the question for him, and he'd repeat the answer, and finally the general just turned to me and started asking me the questions.
So, I think of the movie The Code Talkers or something. Is it kind of like that, what you're doing? I mean, in a similar way, or it sounds like, I mean, you're, and secondly, what are you tapping into? Two-way radio transmissions, phone transmissions?
It was two-way radio transmissions. They were using, was primarily Czechoslovakian and Polish radio equipment, which was very similar, used the same frequencies as the American Army radio used, only they were a rheostat tune. The American Army used crystals so that you had an exact frequency, but you could listen to them, you could monitor them. We'd listen to what they'd say, and they'd do a code, and they always started their codes the same way. That's how we learned to break them. Was they'd say "Dongchi Kaobang," which was comrade, and then they'd go from there, and they used primarily 4-digit codes. They'd have a grid which had the letters of the alphabet on a grid, like a football grid when you do a pool pick, and they'd put numbers up and down the sides. So 1-1 was whatever whatever that number matched, or 2-3 was another letter. And what they would do with the code books is they'd first encode it using this and translate it into 4-digit number groups. Then they would take a code book which had computer-generated numbers in them that were 5-digit, and they would add that number to the number in the code book. And that's what they would transmit over the air, was a 5-digit number. The 5-digit number, you could go back through, if you had the code book, find the first word in the sentence, and go from there, and you'd subtract it back out again and get the code, and then you could once you had the regular 4-digit grid, you could break the grids with the 4-digit. If they just sent straight 4-digit, you could break them if you had enough of them. You could figure out what the grid was, where the numbers fit.
Don't you think that they knew you were listening, and would they ever do like a pretend mortar attack or something just to throw you off? And how did you know if it was all legitimate? I mean, tell or whatever you call it. I mean, do you think they knew you were listening?
Well, they knew we were listening, but some cases they didn't care, and in other cases they thought we couldn't do anything about it. And the reason we were looking for the captured documents and everything was to get as much information about how they did their work as we could, because that way we could. And then we interrogated prisoners who we knew had information about communications.
Interesting work. Of all the veterans I've talked to, I don't think I've talked to radio operators or this and that, but nobody, I think, like breaking codes. This is really interesting. Do you guys have reunions around the country with this group, or is
No.
There weren't a whole lot of people?
And we're in a whole lot of us. I have one good friend that I'm still in contact with, but other than that, none of the others.
Did you lose any friends over there? I mean, that you knew of?
Yeah.
Wounded or killed? Or?
We had only one of the people I worked with was wounded. He was strange wound. He got his throat got damaged, and he survived, but he spoke an octave higher than he did before that. And but I had others who were friends from high school who died there. My other friend from high school who was in Vietnam when I joined, he was back on leave and I was on leave at the same time, and we were at home. We hadn't planned it that way. We just happened to be there, and there was a funeral for one of our other classmates who died there.
What does Vietnam and the Vietnam War mean to you today? Does it have any relevance in your life anymore? I mean,
not really. I know whenever I run into, or if I'm out at a bar or on the street someplace, if I run into somebody who's been to Iraq or Afghanistan, who's home on leave or coming back, if they're at a bar, I buy a drink. Let them know they're appreciated.
What would you say to a Vietnam vet who might see this? What would you say to the Vietnam vet today?
we did what had to be done. It's not our fault that our government and the fools in it threw away all the work we did. We saved lives. And if we had stayed, we would have saved a lot more lives, because there's thousands upon thousands of Vietnamese who died because we gave up. Things in Cambodia would not have been as bad if we'd have stayed.
Is there any comparison with today's war and the Vietnam War?
There has been an attempt to compare it. The news media has tried to compare this war to what happened in Vietnam. But there are other sources of information today. And when I first saw the footage from Iraq, what I kept seeing was burned out cars, and they were reading casualty figures over it. It was so close to what happened in Vietnam. Yeah, I'm almost certain that if I could round up all the footage of the Iraq War and compare it, that you would find the same burnt out car being shown numerous times, and on different dates with different information about it.
You ever been to the Vietnam Wall?
No, I haven't.
Ever want to go there?
I intend to. I have been, there's a traveling wall, I've been to that every chance I get.
Is there any hesitation for you to go to D.C. and actually see the full wall there? Or is it something you want to do, you say, but I know some veterans don't want to do it. They just don't want to do it.
I don't know if I'm ready yet. That's hard to say after 40 years.
So when you came home, when you came out from Vietnam, were you out of the military? Are you still in the military?
I extended to the point at the time, if you came home with less than 5 months to serve, they discharged you if you wanted out. I got off the plane in Oakland, was discharged, wore my dress green uniform for the first time with all my ribbons, and some hippie chick spit on me in the airport. I just don't want that happening to people coming back from Iraq.
Well, that was kind of one of my next questions, was the homecoming, and what did you do when she spit? Can I ask, what did you do? Did you say anything?
Fortunately, there were 4 or 5 other guys with me. We'd all grabbed a cab from the base to the airport. They grabbed me.
That's very, very unfortunate. It happened to you and a lot of people. And do you think maybe we've learned something from Vietnam in that we are welcoming our troops today home? But, I mean, it's just quite a fanfare when they come home today.
I hope we have. I have a fear, because I hear it every so often when I listen to people talking about the troops come home. It's not in all the media, but it is in some of the media, that it's kind of like, well, we support the troops, but we don't support the war. And that, in a way, angers me. 'Cause, it's...
Well, how can you not support the war if you support the troops type thing? So, but, well, you're giving me a good feel of Vietnam. When you see the pictures of yourself, the few that you have upstairs that we scanned, I mean, what do you think about when you see yourself looking younger, and does it bring it all back, those pictures?
Well, it was, last night I went digging through the stuff, and I think back on it, I don't know, I think I left it in there, but there's I had gotten a job offer from the CIA. And when I came back to the States, I decided to finish college. I had an associate degree. I'd done 2 years of college before I joined the Army. And I'd called the CIA, I wrote them a letter, told them that I wasn't going to take the job offer, and they sent me back a letter saying, when I was ready, they had a job. So.
Why didn't you take the job?
At the time, I just thought I wanted to do something different. I'd look back on it and think, if I had taken it, I'd have probably been where Ollie North wound up, something like that. Because I was one of the, what my unit did, what I was good at was getting information from places that we weren't supposed to be able to get it. Because we learned that we could, with a pack of Salem cigarettes or a bottle of cognac, you could get just about anything you wanted in Saigon. And if you befriended the Vietnamese officers in their intelligence corps, they wouldn't necessarily give you the documents, but they'd let you look at them, they'd let you photograph them.
Steve, what should our country remember about Vietnam?
How do I phrase this? Yeah, we threw it away. We should, there is so much false information out about Vietnam. To people who don't understand what's going on, from the time, I remember when I joined the Army, they were talking about it was just an insurgency. There was no organized attempt from outside of South Vietnam to overthrow the government, that it was only the local Viet Cong. And as it, I got in the Army in the first week in intelligence school, they were showing us all the documents about how it definitely was North Vietnamese involved in it. But in America, we weren't being told that. We need to tell the American people who we're fighting. Like, this war we're in now, people still don't understand that we are at war. It's not just a couple of crackpots. There are a lot of people out there who want to kill us. And it's not because we were mean to them or something. It's because they're jealous of us. Americans don't realize how rich we are compared to the rest of the world. They've never seen what real poverty looks like. They think real poverty is having only one television set.
Tell me, this is kind of a loaded question, but I asked the veterans this question, but you're a veteran, you're a citizen of the United States, and kind of what you just said, but tell me what freedom means to you. What does it mean to have freedom and to be free, and then tell me about the price for freedom.
Well, the price for freedom is out there. It's what our soldiers are doing in Iraq and Afghanistan right now. Real freedom is what we're doing right now. I can walk in here and say what I said, and nobody is going to come after me. There are some people who might not like what I said, but the government isn't going to come after me. We are free. We need to keep being free. We watch some of the things that are happening today in our government, and we really need to fight back. We need to make sure we stay free. Yeah, America is what it is. We are as rich as we are because we are free, because we can do what we want to do. Because we can go out there, and if we want to work, we can work. If we want to work 2 jobs, it's 80 hours a week, we can do that. And if we do that and we make enough money to start our own business, we can do that. That's how we grew. That's how we are what we are.
What does the American flag mean and represent to you as a veteran?
It's the flag. It's the symbol. It stands for those freedoms we have. It stands for what we believe in. It's an emblem, and around the world, it's an emblem. There are people around the world who burn the flag, but there are a lot of other people around the world who see the flag and they have hope because they want to come here. That's why people want to come here, because they know they can be free. Yes, there's people who want to come here because they want to make money, but in a way, that's wanting to be free.
That's good. I'm going to be at Fargo South High School tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is there any chance you can come there?
What time are you talking
It's
about?
going to be 9:30 to 10:30.
I'm working tomorrow morning.
If you can get away for an hour, it'd be great to have you there.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
I've had some calls from Vietnam vets, but you're the only one I'm interviewing right now. So, but it'd be nice to have you there if you can come. Is my guess. So, you know where the school is?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Is there anything else maybe I didn't ask you that maybe on your way here you thought about you might want to talk about, or did I ask you some questions that you thought I would ask you, or how?
Yeah, some and some not. There's something, one other just I want to throw out because of the misperceptions. Okay, I was an interrogator. Okay, you say interrogator today, and the first word that comes up is waterboarding. We used a slightly different method. We used cigarettes. We would take a pack of Salem cigarettes. We'd open the pack of cigarettes. We'd walk in to interrogate a guy. Now, at the time, I didn't smoke. I still don't smoke. But I'd carry into an interrogation a pack of cigarettes. I would put the pack of cigarettes down on the table in front of me with a pack of matches and start talking to the guy. And when we talked to him, we started the conversation by asking his name, his birth date, where he was born. Usually too, when we talked to these guys, they'd been prisoners for 2 or 3 days. So they hadn't had a smoke. So we'd sit, ask them where they were born, where they went to grade school, how many brothers and sisters they had. We'd drag it on for a while. And we'd get to the point right about where we were asking when they joined the Army or how they got involved. And right at that point, we'd say, "Excuse me, oh, I'm so sorry. How rude of me. Would you like a cigarette?" By this time, the guy's dying for one. So he'd light up a cigarette and start smoking. And then we'd start asking about when he joined the Army, what he did, where he was trained. And when we got him up to, we tried to time it so he was done with the cigarette right about the time we got up to what he was doing 2 weeks ago, which is the information we wanted. And he wanted another cigarette. So by this time, he'd been talking for a while and anything to get another cigarette. So he was loosened up and he would start talking to us. And we'd get the information we wanted. Interrogation is psychological. And rather than, threaten people, you don't hurt them to try and get information out of them. You get them so they want to talk. Give them a reason that for them they want to talk. And his attitude was, if I keep talking, I get another cigarette.
That's good. That's excellent. You see some of these TV shows and it's a tremendous torture going on to get information.
Yeah.
That's really powerful what you said there.
Yeah, because it worked. And I'm not saying it would work today or not, but for us it worked.
I hope you're comfortable with this. At the end of my interviews and at the end of my films, if you ever watched one of my films, but always at the end of an interview, I always ask the veterans to look into the camera and salute. Could you do that when I ask you? It's kind of my trademark. I use it gracefully at the end of my films. When you're ready, Steve, just look into the camera and go ahead, sir. Excellent. Right on. One more thing now. I normally have my digital Nikon camera and I go click or put it on a stand or have someone take a picture, but I'm going to actually get in the shot with you now and I'll just digitize the shot. So I want you to stay there. I'm going to back this off just a bit. I'm going to get in there with you, but on my website, I don't know if you've been to my website.
No, I haven't.
There's pictures of all the veterans over the years that I've interviewed from day one, and there's always a picture of me and the veteran. So, and a lot of the kids in the schools like that too, so they can see the before and after. So that's why we're scanning yours upstairs too. So, but let me just see this. And we should be able to see ourselves in there, and we'll just pretend like we're taking a picture, but we're doing a video. So I guess you can see us. So on 3, just look into the camera. 1, 2, and 3. I assume you smiled.
That was sort of a smile, yeah. Okay.
Let me take this off of you here. And that's a wrap, man. You did good.